ಆಗಮಿಸಬೇಕಾದ ನಿಂತಿಸ್ತೀನಿ. ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಗುಡ್ ಮಾರ್ನಿಂಗ್ ಲೇಡೀಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಜೆಂಟಲ್ಮೆನ್. ಮೊದಲನೇದಾಗಿ ತಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಶಿಕ್ಷಕರ ದಿನಾಚರಣೆಯ ಶುಭಕಾಮನೆಗಳು. ಬದುಕು ಒಂದು ಸಾಮಾನ್ಯ ಕಲ್ಲಾದರೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಉಳಿಪೆಟ್ಟು ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಶಿಲೆಯಾಗಿ ರೂಪಿಸುವವರು ಅನೇಕರು. ಎಲ್ಲರ ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿಯೂ ಒಂದಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ಹಂತದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೈಹಿಡಿದು ನಡೆಸಿ ಕೆಲವರು ಗುರುಗಳು ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾರೆ. ತಪ್ಪುಗಳನ್ನ ತಿದ್ದಿ ಹೊಸ ಕನಸುಗಳನ್ನ ಬಿತ್ತಿ ಸನ್ಮಾರ್ಗವನ್ನ ಅವರು ತೋರಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಪ್ರತ್ಯಕ್ಷವಾಗಿಯೋ ಪರೋಕ್ಷವಾಗಿಯೋ ನಮ್ಮನ್ನ ಹುರಿದುಂಬಿಸಿ ಸಾಧನೆಯ ಪಥದತ್ತ ಅವರು ಕೊಂಡೊಯ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಂತಹ ಶಿಕ್ಷಕರನ್ನ ಮನದುಂಬಿ ನೆನೆದು ಕೃತಜ್ಞತೆಯನ್ನು ಸಲ್ಲಿಸುವ ಸಮಾರಂಭ ಇದಾಗಿದೆ. ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನ ಪ್ರಾರ್ಥನೆಯೊಂದಿಗೆ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಗೀತೆ ಶಾರದೆ ಕರುಣಾನಿದೆ, ರಾಗ ಹಮೀರ್ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣಿ, ತಾಳ ಚಾಪು. ಹಾಡಲಿರುವವರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ಲಲಿತಕಲಾ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳು.
ಶಾರದೆ ಕರುಣಾನಿದೆ ಸಕಲಾನವಾಂಬ ಸದಾ ಜನಾ. ಶಾರದೆ ಕರುಣಾನಿದೆ ಸಕಲಾನವಾಂಬ ಸದಾ ಜನಾ. ಚಾರಣಾದಿಮಗೀತ ವೈಭವ ಪೂರಿತಾಖಿಲ ಗೀತತೆ ಶಾರದೆ ಕರುಣಾನಿದೆ. ಪರಮಭೂಷಣ ಭೂಷಿತೆ ಮೌಳಿ ವಿರಾಜಿತೆ. ಪರಮಭೂಷಣ ಭೂಷಿತೆ ವರರತ್ನ ಮೌಳಿ ವಿರಾಜಿತೆ. ಶರ್ಮದಾಯಿನಿ ಕರ್ಮಮೋಚಿನಿ ಶಾರದೆ ಹರ್ಷ ಸಂಗತ ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಶಪಟಿ ಸುಧಾಗಟ ಮೂರ್ತಿಕೆ. ಹರ್ಷ ಸಂಗತ ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಶಪಟಿ ಸುಧಾಗಟ ಮೂರ್ತಿಕೆ. ಕೈಸವಾಸಿನಿ ವರ್ಣ ಶಾರದೆ ಸಕಲಾನವಾಂಬ ಸದಾ ಜನಾ. ಚಾರಣಾದಿಮಗೀತೆ ಶಾರದೆ ಶಾರದೆ ಕರುಣಾನಿದೆ.
ಮೈಸೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ಹಿರಿಯ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಯಾದ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರಕವಿ ಜೆ ಶಿವರುದ್ರಪ್ಪನವರು ತಮ್ಮ ಕಾಡಿನ ಕತ್ತಲಲ್ಲಿ ಕವನ ಸಂಕಲನದಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೆದಿರುವ ಪದ್ಯವೊಂದನ್ನ ಈಗ ನಾನು ವಾಚಿಸಲು ಇಚ್ಛಿಸುತ್ತೇನೆ. ಈ ಕವಿತೆಯನ್ನ ಶಿವರುದ್ರಪ್ಪನವರು ತಮ್ಮ ಅಚ್ಚುಮೆಚ್ಚಿನ ಗುರುಗಳನ್ನ ಕುರಿತು ಬರೆದದ್ದು. ನಿಶ್ಶಬ್ದದಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಂತು ನೆನೆಯುತ್ತೇನೆ ನಿಮ್ಮಿಂದ ನಾ ಪಡೆದ ಹೊಸ ಹುಟ್ಟುಗಳ ಗುಟ್ಟುಗಳ. ನಿಶ್ಶಬ್ದದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ನಿಂತು ನೆನೆಯುತ್ತೇನೆ ನಿಮ್ಮಿಂದ ನಾ ಪಡೆದ ಹೊಸ ಹುಟ್ಟುಗಳ ಗುಟ್ಟುಗಳ. ನೀವು ಕಲಿಸಿದಿರಿ ನನಗೆ ತಲೆ ಎತ್ತಿ ನಿಲ್ಲುವುದನ್ನ, ಕಿರುಕುಳಗಳಿಗೆ ಜಗ್ಗದೆ ನಿರ್ಭಯವಾಗಿ ನಡೆಯುವುದನ್ನ, ಸದ್ದಿರದೆ ಬದುಕುವುದನ್ನ. ಎಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಕೀಲಿ ಕೈಗಳನ್ನು ದಾನ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಿ ವಾತ್ಸಲ್ಯದಿಂದ. ನಾನು ಅರಿಯದ ಅನೇಕ ಬಾಗಿಲುಗಳನ್ನು ತೆರೆದಿದ್ದೀರಿ ನನ್ನೊಳಗೆ. ಕಟ್ಟಿ ಹರಸಿದ್ದೀರಿ ಕನ್ನಡದ ಕಂಕಣವನ್ನು ಕೈಗೆ. ಸದ್ದು ಗದ್ದರದ ತುತ್ತೂರು ದನಿಗಳಾಚೆ ನಿಂತು ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನು ನೆನೆಯುತ್ತೇನೆ ಗೌರವದಿಂದ, ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನು ನೆನೆಯುತ್ತೇನೆ ಗೌರವದಿಂದ. ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರಕವಿ ಜಿ ಶಿವರುದ್ರಪ್ಪನವರು ಈ ಭಾವಪೂರ್ಣ ಕವಿತೆಯನ್ನು ಬರೆದು ಅರ್ಪಿಸಿದ್ದು ತಮ್ಮ ನೆಚ್ಚಿನ ಗುರುಗಳಾದ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರಕವಿ ಕುವೆಂಪು ಅವರಿಗೆ. ಈಗ ರಸಋಷಿ ಕುವೆಂಪು ವಿರಚಿತ ನಾಡಗೀತೆಯನ್ನ ತಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದೆ ಸಾದರಪಡಿಸಲಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಸಭಾಸದರು ದಯಮಾಡಿ ಎದ್ದು ನಿಲ್ಲಬೇಕಾಗ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ.
ಭಾರತ ಜನನಿಯ ತನುಜಾತೆ ಜಯ ಹೇ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಮಾತೆ. ಜಾತೆ ಜಯ ಸುಂದರ ನದಿವನಗಳ ನಾಗೆ ಜಯ ಹೇ ರಸ ಋಷಿಗಳ ಬೀಡೆ ಭೂದೇವಿಯ ಮಗುಟದ ನವಮಣಿಯೇ ಗಂಧದ ಚಂದದ ಹೊನ್ನಿನ ಗಣಿಯೇ ರಾಘವ ಮಧುಸೂದನರ ಅವತರಿಸಿದ ಭಾರತ ಜನನಿಯ ತನುಜಾತೆ ಜನನಿಯ ಜೋಗುಳ ವೇದದ ಘೋಷ ಜನನಿಗೆ ಜೀವವು ನಿನ್ನಾವೇಶ ಹಸುರಿನ ಗಿರಿಗಳ ಸಾಕ್ಷಿಯೇ ನಿನ್ನಯ ಕೊರಳಿನ ಮಾಲೆ ಕಪಿಲ ಪತಂಜಲ ಗೌತಮ ಜಿನನುತ ಭಾರತ ಜನನಿಯ ತನುಜಾತೆ ಶಂಕರ ರಮನುಜ ವಿದ್ಯಾರಣ್ಯ ಬಸವೇಶ್ವರ ಮಧ್ವರ ದಿವ್ಯಾರಣ್ಯ ರನ್ನ ಷಡಿ ಪೊನ್ನ ಪಂಪಲ ಕುಮಿಪತಿ ಜನ್ನ ಕುಮಾರ ವ್ಯಾಸರ ಮಂಗಳ ಧಾಮ ಕವಿ ಕೋಗಿಲೆಗಳ ಪುಣ್ಯಾರಾಮ ನಾನಕರ ಮಾನಂದ ಕಬೀರರ ಭಾರತ ಜನನಿಯ ತನುಜಾತೆ ತೈಲವ ಹೊಯ್ಸಳ ರಾಡಿದ ನಾಡೆ ಡಂಕಣ ಜಗಣರ ನೆಚ್ಚಿನ ಬೀಡೆ ಕೃಷ್ಣ ಶರಾವತಿ ತುಂಗ ಕಾವೇರಿಯ ಮನರಂಗ ಚೈತನ್ಯ ಪರಮಹಂಸ ವಿವೇಕರ ಭಾರತ ಜನನಿಯ ತನುಜಾತೆ ಸರ್ವ ಜನಾಂಗದ ಶಾಂತಿಯ ತೋಟ ರಸಿಕರ ಕಂಗಳ ಸೆಳೆಯುವ ನೋಟ ಹಿಂದೂ ಮುಸಲ್ಮಾನ ಪಾರಸಿಕ ಜೈನರ ಜ್ಞಾನ ಜನಕನ ಹೋಲುವ ದೊರೆಗಳ ಧಾಮ ಗಾಯಕ ವೈಣಿಕರ ರಾಮ ಕನ್ನಡ ನುಡಿ ಕುಣಿದಾಡುವ ದೇಹ ಕನ್ನಡ ತಾಯಿಯ ಮಕ್ಕಳ ದೇಹ ಜಯ ಹೇ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಮಾತೆ ಜಯ ಹೇ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಮಾತೆ ಜಯ ಹೇ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಮಾತೆ.
ಪ್ರಾರ್ಥನೆ ಹಾಗೂ ನಾಡಗೀತೆಯನ್ನ ನೆರವೇರಿಸಿದ ಕುಮಾರಿ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣಿ, ಮಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಅಮೋ, ಕುಮಾರಿ ಅನನ್ಯ, ಕುಮಾರಿ ರಾಜಿತಾ, ಕುಮಾರಿ ಹನ್ಸಿಲಾ ಮತ್ತು ಕುಮಾರಿ ಪ್ರಣತಿಯವರಿಗೆ ವಂದನೆಗಳು. Ladies and gentlemen, it is both an honor and privilege to have Professor N.K. Loknath amongst us, who epitomizes academic excellence and transformative leadership. As we stand at the crossroads, it is fitting that we are guided by a leader whose dedication and wisdom illuminate our path forward. Before assuming the role of Vice Chancellor, Professor Loknath distinguished himself as a leading academic. With a career spanning over 2 decades, he has masterfully integrated research, teaching, and administration into a cohesive force. Professor Loknath's leadership is defined by a deep belief in creating a community where every voice is heard and every idea is valued. His approach, marked by a rare combination of humility and determination, has earned him a respect and admiration of students, faculty, and staff alike. So, without further ado, I would like to invite the Honorable Vice Chancellor of the University of Mysore, Professor N.K. Loknath, to deliver the welcome address.
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನನ್ನ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರಗಳು. ನಮಗೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಶಿಕ್ಷಕ ದಿನಾಚರಣೆಯ ಹಾರ್ದಿಕ ಶುಭಕಾಮನೆಗಳು. ಮೈಸೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯ ವತಿಯಿಂದ ಆಯೋಜಿಸಿರುವ ಶಿಕ್ಷಕರ ದಿನಾಚರಣೆಯ ಈ ಶುಭ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸವನ್ನು ನೀಡಲು ಸಮ್ಮತಿಸಿ ಆಗಮಿಸಿರುವ ದೆಹಲಿ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ರಾಜಧಾನಿ ಪ್ರದೇಶದ ಲೆಫ್ಟಿನೆಂಟ್ ಗವರ್ನರ್ ಅವರ ಗೌರವ ಸಲಹೆಗಾರರಾದ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸುದರ್ಶನ ನಾಗರಾಜರವರೇ, ವೇದಿಕೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಆಸೀನರಾಗಿರುವ ಕುಲಸಚಿವರಾದ ಶ್ರೀಮತಿ ಶೈಲಜರವರೇ, ಸಹೋದ್ಯೋಗಿ ಮಿತ್ರರೇ, ಸಿಂಡಿಕೇಟ್ ಸದಸ್ಯರೇ, ಶಿಕ್ಷಣ ಮಂಡಳಿ ಸದಸ್ಯರೇ, ಎಲ್ಲ ನಿಕಾಯದ ಡೀನರುಗಳೇ, ಆಹ್ವಾನಿತರೇ, ಬೋಧಕ ಬೋಧಕೇತರ ಸಿಬ್ಬಂದಿ ವರ್ಗದವರೇ, ಸಂಶೋಧನಾ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳು ಹಾಗೂ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳೇ ಮತ್ತು ಮಾಧ್ಯಮ ಮಿತ್ರರು. ಶ್ರೀ ಸುದರ್ಶನ್ ರಾಮರಾಜ್ ಅವರು ಬದುಕಿನ ಪ್ರಯಾಣದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಹೇಗೆ ಕಲಿಯಬಹುದು ಎಂಬುದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ತಮ್ಮ ವಿಶಾಲವಾದ ಲೋಕಾನುಭವದ ಆಧಾರದ ಮೇಲೆ ಒಂದು ಸೊಗಸಾದ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸವನ್ನು ಈ ದಿನ ನೀಡಲಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆ ಮೂಲಕ 2024ರ ಶಿಕ್ಷಕರ ದಿನಾಚರಣೆಯನ್ನು ಅರ್ಥಪೂರ್ಣಗೊಳಿಸಲಿದ್ದಾರೆ. I am extremely happy to introduce Dr. Sudarshana Ramaraj, Honorary Advisor in Strategic Planning to the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi, National Capital Territory, whose expertise include environment, sustainable development, climate change, disaster reduction, post-conflict and post-disaster restoration, space-based earth observation, information systems, international diplomacy, institutional development, and policy development. Dr. Sudarshan has decades of association into the government of India. He has devoted more than 20 years in the Indian Space Research Organization, beginning as a senior scientist and culminating as the head of planning and programs in Earth observations. His services in the United Nations is noteworthy. Expert and advisor in the UN Regional Seas Program and in restoration and sustainable development of war damaged environments of the Middle East and Kuwait have been the high point of his service. Dr. Sudarshan has obtained his PhD in marine science in 1986 from Karnataka University, Dharwad. He is a much traveled scientist, and we are sure to aim a lot of insights into his life and achievements during the course of his talk today on the topic Learnings from Life, Journeys of a Fellow Mysorean. Dr. Sudarshan Ramraj ಅವರಿಗೆ ತಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಹಾಗೂ ವೈಯಕ್ತಿಕವಾಗಿ ನನ್ನ ಹೃತ್ಪೂರ್ವಕ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನು ಕೋರುತ್ತೇನೆ. ಈ ದಿನ ಶಿಕ್ಷಕರ ದಿನಾಚರಣೆ. ತಮಗೆಲ್ಲ ತಿಳಿದ ಹಾಗೆ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸರ್ವೇಪಲ್ಲಿ ರಾಧಾಕೃಷ್ಣನ್ ಅವರ ಜೀವಗಾಥೆಯನ್ನು ನಾವು ಮತ್ತೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಮೆಲುಕು ಹಾಕಬೇಕಾದ ಅಗತ್ಯವಿದೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಮಾಡೋದ್ರಿಂದ ನಮಗೆ ಸ್ಫೂರ್ತಿ ಹಾಗೂ ಪ್ರೇರಣೆ ಪ್ರಾಪ್ತವಾಗುತ್ತದೆ. ನಿಮಗೆಲ್ಲ ತಿಳಿದಿರುವಂತೆ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ರಾಧಾಕೃಷ್ಣನ್ ಜನಿಸಿದ್ದು ಆಂಧ್ರ ಪ್ರದೇಶ ಮತ್ತು ತಮಿಳುನಾಡು ಗಡಿಯಲ್ಲಿರುವ ತಿರುತ್ತಣಿ ಎಂಬ ಸಣ್ಣ ಪುಟ್ಟ ಗ್ರಾಮದಲ್ಲಿ. ತಂದೆ ಸರ್ವೇಪಲ್ಲಿ ವೀರಸ್ವಾಮಿ, ತಾಯಿ ಸೀತಮ್ಮ. ವೀರಸ್ವಾಮಿಯವರ ತಂದೆ ಸೀತಾರಾಮಯ್ಯನವರು ಆಂಧ್ರದ ನೆಲ್ಲೂರು ಜಿಲ್ಲೆಯ ಸರ್ವೇಪಲ್ಲಿ ಎಂಬ ಗ್ರಾಮದವರು. ಸೀತಾರಾಮಯ್ಯನವರು ತಮ್ಮ ಗ್ರಾಮ ಸರ್ವೇಪಲ್ಲಿಯನ್ನು ಬಿಟ್ಟು 10 ವರ್ಷ ತಮ್ಮ ಮಗ ವೀರಸ್ವಾಮಿಯನ್ನು ಕರೆದುಕೊಂಡು ತಿರುತ್ತಣಿಗೆ ಬಂದು ಬಿಟ್ಟುತ್ತಾರೆ. ತದನಂತರ ತಮ್ಮ ಅಜ್ಜನ ಊರಾದ ಸರ್ವೇಪಲ್ಲಿ ರಾಧಾಕೃಷ್ಣನ್ ಅವರ ಹೆಸರಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸೇರಿ ಹೋಯಿತು. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಅವರನ್ನ ನಾವು ಸರ್ವೇಪಲ್ಲಿ ರಾಧಾಕೃಷ್ಣನ್ ಎಂದು ಕರೆಯುತ್ತೇವೆ. ರಾಧಾಕೃಷ್ಣನ್ ಅವರ ವಿದ್ಯಾಭ್ಯಾಸ 3 ಊರುಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆಯಿತು. ಆ ಊರುಗಳೆಂದರೆ ತಿರುಪತಿ, ವೆಲ್ಲೂರು ಹಾಗೂ ಮದ್ರಾಸ್. ತಿರುಪತಿಯ ಲೂಥರ್ನ್ ಮಿಷನ್ ಹೈಸ್ಕೂಲ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ವಿದ್ಯಾಭ್ಯಾಸ, ನೆಲ್ಲೂರಿನ ಓರ್ಸ್ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ನಾತಕೋತ್ತರ ತರಗತಿಗಳು, ಮದ್ರಾಸ್ ಕ್ರಿಶ್ಚಿಯನ್ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನಲ್ಲಿ BA ಹಾಗೂ ವಿಲಿಯಂ ಮೆಸ್ಟನ್ ಹಾಗೂ ಆಲ್ಫ್ರೆಡ್ ಹ್ಯಾಗ್ ಅವರ ಗುರುಗಳು, ವಿಲಿಯಂ ಸ್ಕಿನ್ನರ್ ಪ್ರಾಂಶುಪಾಲರು. ತಮಗೆಲ್ಲ ತಿಳಿದಿರುವ ಹಾಗೆ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ರಾಧಾಕೃಷ್ಣನ್ ಅವರು ಬೈಬಲ್ ಓದುವ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದರ ಪ್ರೇರಣೆಯಿಂದ ಬ್ರಹ್ಮಸೂತ್ರ, ಉಪನಿಷತ್ತು ಹಾಗೂ ಭಗವದ್ಗೀತೆಯನ್ನು ಅಭ್ಯಾಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದರು. ಶಂಕರ, ರಾಮಾನುಜ ಹಾಗೂ ಮಧ್ವಾಚಾರ್ಯರ ತತ್ವಗಳನ್ನು ತಿಳಿದುಕೊಂಡರು. ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಹಿಂದೂ, ಬೌದ್ಧ, ಜೈನ ಧರ್ಮಗಳ ಉಪದೇಶಗಳನ್ನು ಅರಿತುಕೊಂಡರು. 1909ರಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಾಧ್ಯಾಪಕರಾಗಿ ಅವರು ತಾವು ಕಲಿತ ಮದ್ರಾಸ್ ಕ್ರಿಶ್ಚಿಯನ್ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನಲ್ಲಿ ವೃತ್ತಿ ಜೀವನ ಆರಂಭಿಸಿದರು. 1916ರಲ್ಲಿ ಸರ್ಕಾರಿ ಕಲಾ ಕಾಲೇಜಿಗೆ ವರ್ಗವಾಯಿತು. 1918ರಿಂದ 1921ರವರೆಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಮೈಸೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ತತ್ವಶಾಸ್ತ್ರ ಪ್ರಾಧ್ಯಾಪಕರಾಗಿ ಸೇವೆ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸಿದರು. ಅವರ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳ ಪೈಕಿ ಸುಪ್ರಸಿದ್ಧ ಪ್ರಾಧ್ಯಾಪಕರಾದ ಯಮುನಾಚಾರ್ಯರು ಹಾಗೂ ವಿ ಸೀತಾರಾಮಯ್ಯರು ಎದ್ದು ಕಾಣುತ್ತಾರೆ. ಹಾಗೆಯೇ ಸಾರ್ವಜನಿಕ ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿ ಬಹಳ ಖ್ಯಾತಿವಂತರಾದ ಶ್ರೀ ಎಸ್ ನಿಜಲಿಂಗಪ್ಪನವರು ರಾಧಾಕೃಷ್ಣನ್ ಅವರ ಶಿಷ್ಯರೊಬ್ಬರು. ಕೋಲ್ಕತ್ತಾ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ಕುಲಪತಿಗಳಾಗಿದ್ದ ಶ್ರೀ ಅಶುತೋಷ್ ಮುಖರ್ಜಿ ಅವರ ಆಹ್ವಾನದ ಮೇರೆಗೆ ರಾಧಾಕೃಷ್ಣನ್ ಅವರು ಕೋಲ್ಕತ್ತಾ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯಕ್ಕೆ ಹೊರಟ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಮೈಸೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳು ನೀಡಿದ ಬೀಳ್ಕೊಡುಗೆ ಅಮೋಘವಾಗಿತ್ತು. 106 ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳ ಹೃದಯ ಮಂದಿರದಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ಅನುಭವ ಚಿರಸ್ಥಾಯಿಯಾಯಿತು. ಈ ಸಂಗತಿಯನ್ನು ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಪ್ರಾಧ್ಯಾಪಕರು ಹಾಗೂ ಸುಪ್ರಸಿದ್ಧ ಲೇಖಕರು ಆದ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ A.N. ಮೂರ್ತಿರಾಯರು ಅದ್ಭುತವಾಗಿ ಚಿತ್ರಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಓದಿ ಸುಖ ಅನುಭವಿಸಬೇಕಾದ ಬರಹ ಅದು. ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸರ್ವೇಪಲ್ಲಿ ರಾಧಾಕೃಷ್ಣನ್ ಅವರು ಉಪರಾಷ್ಟ್ರಪತಿಯಾಗಿ, ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರಪತಿಯಾಗಿ ದೊಡ್ಡ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶದ ಕೀರ್ತಿಯನ್ನು ಬೆಳಗಿದರು. 1967ರ ಮೇ 13ನೇ ತಾರೀಕು ತಮ್ಮ ಕೊನೆಯ ದಿನ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರು ಮದ್ರಾಸಿನ ತಮ್ಮ ಸ್ವಂತ ಮನೆಗೆ ತೆರಳಿದರು. ಇದು ಅವರ ಘನವಾದ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿತ್ವ ಹಿಡಿದ ಕನ್ನಡಿಯಾಗಿತ್ತು. One particular observation stands out as it reflects Dr. Radhakrishnan expectation of a teacher. He said, instead of waiting for the appreciations of others, a teacher must derive satisfaction that he has discharged his duties without discrimination. This is the only way to continue the time-honored traditions of the teacher and the pupil. And also, we shall not forget the dictum of the Kothari Commissions, which said, the destiny of India is being shaped in our classrooms. There is an intimate relationship between the life of the individuals and the life of the nation, because the national progress depends upon the hard work, energy, selflessness, and uprightness of the individual. Likewise, the development of a nation depends on quality of her population, which is largely determined by her education. As Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru rightly said, the question of integration covers education. And that way, Dr. Radhakrishnan again reiterated that if India is to remain free and united and democratic, only education should train people for unity and not localism, for democracy and not for dictatorship. All the stalwart thinkers and educationists have emphasized the society and the necessity of safeguarding unity and integrity of the nation. Education is the medium through which training is imparted to promote social efficacy of the individual, taking care of various fields as medical, engineering, teaching profession, apprenticeship in trade, technical, and industrial works. In all this, the national interest is to be given top priority. We have seen our national leaders sacrificing their lives for the freedom, integrity, security, and honor of our nation. Their wisdom and capacity will merely lead them to equitable destinations. On this most auspicious day, let us entertain sanguinary thoughts about the maturity of our learners, because they enjoy the blessings of great souls like Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan and other wise people of country. With these words, I end my welcome speech, and thank you very much. I thank you one and all. Jai Hind, Jai Karnataka.
Thank you, sir. ಎಲ್ಲರನ್ನ ಆತ್ಮೀಯವಾಗಿ ಸ್ವಾಗತಿಸಿದಂತಹ ಗೌರವಾನ್ವಿತ ಕುಲಪತಿಗಳು ಕೂಡ ಹೃತ್ಪೂರ್ವಕವಾದ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನ ಬಯಸ್ತೀನಿ. ಮಾನ್ಯ ಕುಲಸಚಿವರು ಪುಷ್ಪಗುಚ್ಛವನ್ನ ಸನ್ಮಾನ್ಯ ಕುಲಪತಿಗಳಿಗೆ ನೀಡಬೇಕಾಗಿ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊಂತೀನಿ. ಇದೇ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾನ್ಯ ಕುಲಸಚಿವರಾದಂತಹ ಶ್ರೀಮತಿ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಶೈಲಜಾ ಅವರು ಕೂಡ ಹೃತ್ಪೂರ್ವಕವಾದ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನ ಕೋರ್ತೇನೆ. ಮೈಸೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯವು ಬಹುದೊಡ್ಡ ಗುರು ಶಿಷ್ಯ ಪರಂಪರೆಗೆ ಸಾಕ್ಷಿಯಾಗಿದೆ. ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಜಿ ಎಸ್ ಶಿವರುದ್ರಪ್ಪನವರು ಕುವೆಂಪು ಅವರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳಿದಂತೆಯೇ, ಕುವೆಂಪು ಅವರು ತಮ್ಮ ಮೆಚ್ಚಿನ ಗುರುಗಳಾದ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಟಿ ಎಸ್ ವೆಂಕಣ್ಣಯ್ಯನವರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇಂತಹದ್ದೇ ಭಕ್ತಿ ಭಾವವನ್ನ ತಳೆದಿದ್ರು. 20ನೇ ಶತಮಾನದ ಮಹಾಕಾವ್ಯವಾದ ಶ್ರೀ ರಾಮಾಯಣ ದರ್ಶನಂ ಕೃತಿಯನ್ನ ತಮ್ಮ ಗುರುಗಳಿಗೆ ಹೀಗೆ ಅರ್ಪಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಇದು ಮುಗಿದು ತಂದಿಹೆನ್ ಈ ಬೃಹತ್ ಗಾನಮಂ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಸಿರಿಯಡಿಗೊಪ್ಪಿಸಿ ಓ ಪ್ರಿಯ ಗುರುವೆ, ಕಾವ್ಯಮಂ ವಿಶ್ವಮಣಿಗೆ ಮುಡಿಯ ಮಣಿ ಮಾಡಿಹೆನ್ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕೃಪೆಯಿಂದ ಅನ್ನುತ್ತಾರೆ. ಸರ್ವಪಲ್ಲಿ ರಾಧಾಕೃಷ್ಣನ್ ಅವರನ್ನು ಒಳಗೊಂಡಂತೆ ಮೈಸೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯದ ಘನತೆಯನ್ನು ಎತ್ತರಕ್ಕೆ ಕೊಂಡೊಯ್ದ ಎಲ್ಲ ಗುರುವರಿಯರನ್ನ ಆರ್ಧತೆಯಿಂದ ನೆನೆಯುತ್ತಾ ಈಗ ದೀಪ ಬೆಳಗುವ ಮೂಲಕ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಉದ್ಘಾಟಿಸಬೇಕಾಗಿ ವೇದಿಕೆ ಮೇಲಿನ ಗಣ್ಯರನ್ನ ವಿನಂತಿಸ್ತೀನಿ. ಇದೇ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಎಸ್ ರಾಧಾಕೃಷ್ಣನ್ ಅವರ ಭಾವಚಿತ್ರಕ್ಕೆ ಪುಷ್ಪನಮನವನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸಬೇಕಾಗಿ ವಿನಂತಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಬಂಧುಗಳೇ, ಮೈಸೂರಿಗರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಆರೋಪ ಇದೆ, ನಮ್ಮ ಊರನ್ನ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಇವರೆಲ್ಲೂ ಈಚೆ ಹೋಗಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ. ಪಕ್ಕದ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ಹೋಗೋದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಕಷ್ಟ, ಸಂಜೆ ಅಷ್ಟೊಳಗೆ ವಾಪಸ್ ಮನೆಗೆ ಹಿಂದಿರ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಬಯಸೋಂಥವ್ರು. ಅಂತದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಮೈಸೂರಿನ ಕೀರ್ತಿಯನ್ನ ದೇಶ ವಿದೇಶಕ್ಕೆ ಹರಡದಂತ ಕೀರ್ತಿ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸುದರ್ಶನ್ ರಾಮರಾಜು ಅವರಿಗೆ ಸಲ್ಲುತ್ತೆ. ಲೇಡೀಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಜೆಂಟಲ್ಮೆನ್, imagine a visionary who has navigated the complexities of space science but has also championed sustainable development and environmental protection on a global scale. Today, we are honored to have such a distinguished personality amongst us. Dr. Sudarshan Ramaraju is not just a name, but a symbol of expertise in the realms of environmental diplomacy and strategic planning. With 16 years of impactful association with the United Nations, Dr. Ramaraju has played significant roles in safeguarding the Persian Gulf, restoring war-torn environments, and guiding nations like Kuwait and Jordan through post-conflict recovery. His journey is as expansive as his contributions, from consulting on remote sensing in East Africa and the Arab states to advising global giants on transformative environmental strategies. His 25-year association with the Government of India, including leadership roles, proves his commitment to innovation and sustainability. His work exemplifies the fusion of science, strategy, and service. It is with great respect and admiration now I call upon Dr. Sudarshan Ramaraju to deliver today's special lecture. Sir, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Rohit. ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಿ, ನನಗೂ ಕನ್ನಡ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, but I am not so very prepared for speaking in Kannada, so you will excuse me. Also, ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, normally the best thing that you keep for the last one. So if you have a rasmalai or something like that, which is almost a language my mother tongue, perhaps I should speak at the end a little bit in the closing. Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a great honor. I'm not a mainstream teacher. I have dabbled a little bit in teaching here and there. I've been a visiting professor here and there, but a very short stint of teaching, of course, in the university as well, long back. But most of the time I have spent in the world strategizing, doing things which are not the mainstream teaching, but basically learning. So I'm qualified to talk about learning, perhaps not about teaching. That is my first confession. I thought I would just make that first and then start going ahead. Great honor to be here. When I received this invitation from you, sir, the Vice Chancellor, I was reading the first two paragraphs have been completely endowed with the names which are historic personalities like Kuvempu, Radhakrishnan, all that. There are many names, CNR Rao, with whom I have also interacted quite a bit in my profession. A lot of names which are legends, basically. It's so difficult for us to even understand that they also walked the same path that we did. They also taught in the university. They were all common people like us, scientists, professors. It's so difficult to reconcile with that fact because we look at them as legends, because these are personalities of history. These are people who are quite big, who changed the society rather than simply teaching or being in one small confined environment doing their duties. So it's greatly inspiring that this particular platform has given rise to this kind of sons of the nation. I have a great fascination for Kuvempu as well because I lived in this city. I grew up in this city. I was raised in this city. I was born in this city. Okay. And I went to school in this city. I went to a small school called Sarvajanika High School, which is not far from here. It is still existing. I haven't been there for the last 50 years now. God knows why. I think I should go there. I was studied in a small place called Shraddha Vilas. I haven't been there for the last 45 years. I left the city about 40 years ago, but I have had the fascination for the leaders of the city, especially Kuvempu, whose statue is there in the main door or the main gate of this university. Tell me, ladies and gentlemen, show me one person, just one person who grew up in the city, who was born in the city, who was not swept away clean from the ground by the creative genius or the winds of creative genius of Kuvempu. What a great poet he was, what a great visionary he was. Just now, the boys and girls, they were singing a song. I was listening to that. What a structure, what a creation, what meaning. These are, standing in a university, standing in a platform, this kind of personalities were, is a greatly inspiring thing, great honor. And on such an occasion, if I'm not shaking or if my knees are not shivering, then I'm disrespectful to those people. Yeah. So that is a kind of platform this is. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having me here or hosting me. About Radhakrishnan, I have had a small, I was very unfortunate. I haven't met or I haven't seen Kuvempu. I have only lived in the legend of this personality. But Radhakrishnan, I had one small occasion to see him from a distance, of course. I didn't have any interaction because he was such an elderly person. I was very young when he was very old, unfortunately. I remember I must have been about 7 years or 8 years of age, or a little younger to that. My father took us, the family, to Madras, for a sightseeing trip. And the name Madras itself fascinated me because it was a big city. I was going from a very small town called Mysore. Mysore is a big city now, but the Mysore I grew up was a very small place. So Madras looked like a very big place. And I thought there is mad rush here, and so that's why they call it as Madras. That's the kind of understanding. But my father took us, for God knows why, he took us to the rail station, and then we were standing just in front of the railway station in Madras, and a lot of people were standing on either side of the road. We were also standing, a cavalcade went by, and Dr. Radhakrishnan was there in one of those cars. He was just moving. And I saw him. That was the only glimpse, that was the only image I have of this person. He had just retired from being the president of India. He was returning to his city. And then that day, everybody was watching. So I also happened to be there. So that was a great occasion. And so that image is still in the mind. And I look at Radhakrishnan also, even now, as a big legend, who I have that image. And I still cannot, I go back to what I said just now, I still cannot reconcile with the fact that he was also, one of the professors here. He started his life in such a humble manner. So that said, ladies and gentlemen, I also have one more confession to make, that I'll keep drinking a little water because for the last 2 days I've been dehydrated. I was telling you, Vice Chancellor, because of the travel. So you will have to cope up with that. One dissatisfaction I have, or one regret I have, is that I did not study in this university. Of course, I did my bachelor's here, but I did not come to this university to study my master's or highest piece of tertiary. But I do remember coming to Manas Gangotri. We used to bicycle on ride the bicycle on Kukralikare, Dibban. Those days it was open. And we used to drive down the slopes of that thing, stopping the cycle just very close to the water, not falling into the water. That was all allowed those days. And we used to come here, go round and round the circular canteen which you have. By the way, Delhi has got a new parliament, so I think the Vice Chancellor should also construct a new cafe here. A circular restaurant has been here for a very long time. So, we used to go round and round. I used to go even to the library to borrow the books. And stealthily, I would also keep the books, the most favorite books of mine in some shelves so that nobody else could pick it up, hide them. Vice Chancellor, you can punish me for that. You have invited me already, anyhow. So these are the memories I have of Mysore University, but I always wanted to study and I do not know why I did not pursue my studies here. Well, I cannot question the past. I'll leave it there. But so this particular day, in fact, when I got this invitation, has a great amount of significance in my life because something which did not come to me 40 years ago at least came to me. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you, third time, on this page, for having me here, for hosting me here, and for tolerating me here. Let me just start talking about what I did and then what kind of things that I learned, which I can share with you. This morning, during coffee, I was talking to my daughter as to how do I begin this speech? What is that I can speak to the professors, speak to the big, learned minds? It's not every day in my profession in Delhi that I meet learned people. What did I say? Okay. Anyhow, Delhi is far away, nobody is listening to me. So it is, I just really want to be substantive. I really wanted to have substance to begin with. And so I was talking to her. And this little girl of mine, whom I brought up in different parts of the world, who went into British education right from the beginning, up to her master's degree, she was always influenced by the British education. She came back and told me that there's a huge amount of difference between learning and teaching. Not that I did not know, but it was coming from a younger generation. Because in my generation, in my colleges, in my universities, it was teaching which was most important. And then perhaps in this generation, especially in the tertiary level, it is learning which is more important. That's what she said. So we were talking about this whole thing, and then we traced that over a period of time, we may have tipped the balance between teaching and learning. There was a time when teaching had to be 40-50%, and the learning had to be 50%. There had to be complete reciprocation of what you say and what the student should learn. And then you are the master, only what you give has to be absorbed by the students. So that was the tenet, that was the foundation of learning, that was the foundation of education long, long ago. But she was reflecting with me that this kind of a thing may have changed. This may be still there in the lower rounds of education, primary, in the middle schools, in high schools, probably. But in the colleges and the universities, this may have already tipped, which means that we are getting into this kind of, you all know this better than me. Let me articulate a little bit of what I know. This may have tipped, and so we have gone into this kind of a digital revolution, or digital resources, etc., in such a manner, and we're dealing with very mature, quite mature students who are into their youth, who can learn by themselves. So is there a necessity for us to relearn or reinvent what exactly is education, what exactly are the foundations of teaching? Because I remember, growing my daughter in different countries, especially in England or in the British schools, there was absolutely, even in high school, there was no concept of teaching. There was a concept of teaching, but there was more of a concept of facilitating. They used to have learning rooms. They used to be put in a place where there would be computers, there are resources, links are shared with them. They have to study the syllabus. And in case you have any difficulty, you would come and then talk to the teacher, okay? And so there were facilitation schedules more than the teaching schedules, very little. So the so-called human edge in education, the so-called human interference in education was being removed by the system quite long ago. I'm talking about some 20 years ago or 15 years ago when my daughter was in school. So now we have come forward into another generation of thought. We have got the artificial intelligence. People have been talking about artificial intelligence-based universities and all that. So if we do not have the human edge, if you are just normal routine teachers, who can only teach the syllabus in a normal way, I think we are finding less relevance in the society than what we used to have. So unless we reinvent ourselves in a very big way, and unless we re-establish a justification for the human edge in education, perhaps we have run out of time, and then we have to do that. So if the teaching has to come back to 50-50 level of this pedagogical tree, I think there is a whole lot of things that is to be done. I do not know. I'm just reflecting because it's always easier to reflect from my standpoint of view. But I think that is one of those necessities. In this regard, I think I should tell you, we had one small experiment that was done. It is not a small experiment, it became large much later. I will go back to 1990s. Let me start tracing, the topic of the day is my journey and my learning. And so let me start my journey also and take you along, with me into the situations where I was, into the countries where I was, into the institutions and programs where I had some input. Okay. And let us learn what I learned, or let me expose what I learned. So this happened sometime in the 1990s. Okay. I was in charge of the international affairs in the Indian Space Research Organization. I was also the head of Earth observation at that point in time. Not into planning yet, but I was into the science of Earth observation. And it so happened that I went to Japan as a visiting professor in one of those universities because I wanted to have a sabbatical. And I haggled with my boss, Dr. Kasturi Rangan, and then he somehow finally kindly said, okay, go. Okay, I was there. And since I was also there, they also handed over to me another assignment. I was science attaché to the government of India for the East Asian countries, sitting in Japan as a visiting professor. So I was trying to structure the promotion of science, especially the space technology, in the East Asian countries like Australia, like Philippines, like the whole lot of East Asian countries like Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, this kind of places. I used to travel and talk to them, but suddenly one day I got a call. I was in the middle of this function, and my daughter was also in the middle of her school, and she was enjoying, and then I was called back. So I was asked to come back immediately the next day. That's how the government works usually. So I did rush back to the country, leaving all those things. And the opportunity was this. The opportunity was that the United Nations has got a small wing called the Office of Outer Space Affairs, UNOOSA. Okay, and they wanted to popularize the space sciences because space sciences in the 1990s had become a very big thing, 1980s and 1990s. It was trying to solve a lot of problems, socio-economic problems, socio-cultural problems, resource issues, environmental issues. So there was no research, there was no solution to any of these things without the space technology. And India was a spacefaring nation. India was a big country in terms of space. And so there was a lot of noise about how India should get into the space-based hegemonistic position in East Asia. There was a geopolitical angle to it, but there was also a lot of scientific basis to that. So the United Nations Outer Space Affairs Office, it came up with a great idea that we should have promotion of space sciences both in Latin America and in East Asia. And the East Asian thing was a competitive bid. So they asked the countries in this region as to come up with a university for space sciences. Okay, but there was no university for space science and technology at that moment. India felt that it is in a great position to start this university and invent the faculty, invent the research boards, etc. And then the opportunity was such that you could be the boss of East Asia, you could teach all these people, you could train all these different countries and still be in a great geopolitical position in terms of science and technology. But it so happened that because it's a competitive thing, Pakistan bid for that, Sri Lanka was there in the race, Malaysia was there in the race, India was there in the race, and China was there in the race. We were not bothered about any of the other countries. China was a big player. China was bigger than us in space sciences. But India wanted it. So I was summoned back from Japan, and I was given this opportunity to structure this, coordinate this center, the concept of the center, and bid at the United Nations so that India has it. It's basically an Indian center, but it would be under the auspices of the United Nations. So that was a great prestige. That was a great dignity for India. So we went about doing this thing. At that time, so initial rounds, we went to the universities, we spoke to the professors, we tried to invite several people and said that we will have a university with about 8 to 10 faculty, etc. But then, there was this visionary called Narasimha Rao, who was the Prime Minister. I didn't meet him, but of course my bosses went to meet him. And then he sent a word that no, university is just an arrangement of education, but university structure of university stifles, the spread of the knowledge. So that, and also because it will command a limited resource, it cannot expand beyond a certain level. So let us not have a university, but let us have a distributed center for that. The concept was very simple. There is going to be no building, a small building, of course, and there's going to be no permanent faculty. There is going to be no permanent laboratories or something, but there will be national convergence. So we went about, this was a great concept in 1994-95. India was in that position of resurgence at that time, suddenly, and this was the concept that came up. And we did establish what is called as the Center for Space Science and Technology Education in Asia Pacific. It's centered around Dehradun, but it got the resources of all the Department of Space Centers, most of the IITs, most of the universities, wherever the faculty was. So no single faculty was named by person, but everything came up through the resources. And of course, we won the bid in the next 5 years. I was the coordinator director for that. That was a gratitude given to me. That was an opportunity that I had to run that center. But this was very, very close. Why I'm taking this particular thing is that this was absolutely close to this AI-based university or distributed centers of knowledge or this wide availability of virtual knowledge, which can be commanded and forced, and then the learning process can be energized or enabled or embellished. Okay. So this was an experiment in case, but when I say that the universities have to reinvent themselves, or the whole process of teaching itself has to reinvent in order to maintain ourselves at the pace of learning of the young people who have got that enormous power of digital domain. I think we have to reinvent how to put these resources together instead of being very rigid in structure and format of the learning institutions. It need not be university, could be anything of learning institutions. And I think sitting in Delhi, I know that the concepts such as this would definitely get you a lot of funds because India, even now, is at a stage where this evolution of this explosion of knowledge, which resources which are available to us, can be rooted somewhere, can be somehow dovetailed into the learning process. Let me just go back again from so that is from 1994 to 2000 or so when I was the director of that center. And we did a lot of many things. We did issue, now we did run M.Tech programs, we did run PhD programs for a lot of years. Even today it is there, all the way from the Middle East to Australia. We train students, we set up institutions in these countries for space sciences. Laboratories were set up with international firms and all that. It is still functioning, but it still doesn't have its own faculty, its own resources, but it still works on the national convergence of knowledge, which is the concept. Now, sometimes the educational, because we all learn, we all write so many papers, we are giants in our own sciences, etc. We have our own dignity in the world. people respect us when we go to the conferences and all that. But there are times, ladies and gentlemen, when we feel very humble about our education, because when we feel that our education is inadequate, wherever you are, there was one such opportunity, which humbled me, which put me down to the ground and showed me my place. That was sometime in 2004. I was already at the United Nations, but there was an arrangement, in which I was working where I could be there, then I could also be here in India for a couple of months because I still had responsibilities. In the government, especially in the institutions like ISRO, there is something called the institutional memory, which doesn't go away. So people are not allowed to just go away just like that, because you will carry with you all the institutional memory. It takes a lot of time for somebody else to pick up and come to that stage, come to speed. So there was an arrangement where I was supposed to come and slowly transfer the institutional memory to another person. So I used to come and stay for a while and go. And I was in Hyderabad in 2004, going to the office. 2004, December 26th, must be 8 o'clock or so. I was driving to the office, and then this man, the head of the bureau of PTI in Hyderabad, he called me. And he said, "Sir, do you know, thousands of people have died. There was a wave which was as high as about 100 feet, 30 meters. That's what he said. I couldn't believe that. I've been an oceanographer all my life. I have never seen a 100 feet wave. I had never seen a 30 meters wave. And I just told him, "But look, gentlemen, this is not okay. You people in the press, you come up with all kinds of sensational stories. This cannot happen. I know for sure. I have a PhD in oceanography, 30 meters wave in Bay of Bengal, in Tamil Nadu. Forget about it. You're fibbing." I was not very kind to him. Anyhow, he kept quiet. He said, "I will go back and then check and I'll come back to you, sir." Well, I reached the office. By then, the news was thickening, all the way. I had a number of calls, and I went to the office. And then my staff who were working on the satellite data predictions, satellite data, the real-time satellite data, people started pouring into the office. And they said, there is this possibility that there was a huge wave in Tamil Nadu, which has killed a lot of people. We understood that was the history's biggest tsunami that happened on December 26th morning at 7:89 because of this big earthquake that happened in Sumatra, something like about 8.5 to 9.1 on Richter scale, one of the largest, okay, which killed more than 300,000 people around the world in 14 countries, okay? And then the wave traveled at 700 to 800 kilometers per hour, almost like the speed of the aircraft on the sea. And it hit countries as far as Oman. Think about it. Unheard of. My education had not taught me that. I was an oceanographer. Couldn't believe that. Then what happened was, by the evening that day, there was a call from the Prime Minister's office to my boss. Dr. Kasturirangan had just retired. Dr. Madhavan Nair was there in office, but Kasturirangan was still in the chair. He was in the commission, Space Commission. He was a fountainhead of knowledge. And so the Prime Minister called a delegation of people. He was already meeting a number of delegations, so he called a space delegation as well to get an idea of what happened. And about 5 or 6 of us went. Since I was the head of Earth observation planning, we also went along. Then the Prime Minister, he sat before us. That was the only time I saw this Prime Minister. One of the most polite Prime Ministers I have ever seen in life. I did see a number of Prime Ministers in my stint with the United Nations, but nobody was as polite as this person was. He just sat there, looked at us, put his head down. He was thinking in a poignant manner. And he said, "Gentlemen, what is the use of your education?" And then immediately he realized that he must have offended us because he used the word "you." And immediately he reverted and said, "What is the use of our education?" And then the story unfolded. What is the use of our education if we can allow 70,000 people killed in just about an hour's time in 21st century? with all PhDs, with all universities, with all national laboratories, with all predictive abilities. Ladies and gentlemen, we had not learned anything. The use of knowledge was very different. You know, if later on in the United Nations, when I went to meet Ban Ki-moon sometime, I very proudly told him all that I did, space sciences, that, this. One thing that he told me was, everything is subservient to peace and security. That's it. The peace and security of human race is the ultimate. And if our education, if our training, if all the skills that we learn, the knowledge, the fountainheads of information, etc., if they don't dovetail to that, save people, save humanity, and doesn't reduce or retract the progress of civilization in the path of civilization, we haven't learned, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I learned. That's what I felt that day. That yes, we haven't been able to do that. That was a very important point, not only in my life, but also in the life of the Indian Space Research Organization and the life of the nation. Immediately afterwards, 2005, we had in the nation the National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA, which brought in the structural framework for disasters, etc. Every state had a unit of that thing. We had in the nation big laboratories, the IITs, and everybody was coming up with the proposals, research proposals, how to bring in science, to predict the disasters. And then in the nation, there was another problem, the geo-information, because we learned that day, most of these problems are coming basically because of hoarding of information, hoarding of knowledge. This is mine. This temperature measurement is mine. This humidity measurement is mine. You have done just about 10 readings somewhere. Your research scholars do that. This is mine. Until I publish it, won't give it to anybody. For God's sake, the information that is hoarded is justice denied in a country, in a situation like that. So we understood that because of the lack of transparency of information and knowledge in the country, we were suffering, which is not there in many of the Western countries. In America, even in that time, in Ireland started the race, the aerial photographs with which you could find a lot of information, etc., were in the public domain for a very long time. In India, even until about 2008, 2010, if you wanted a cadastral map, which is about 1,000 to 5,000 scale or so, you had to be the defense clearance. Okay? So how do universities also use high-level information, high-resolution information? The satellite information, which comes streaming every day, huge amount of data that comes to you, cannot be used if you do not have the proper permissions. So we were at a point, the Prime Minister was very, very insisting on that. And then we structured the geo information policy in the country, releasing the domain, the brittles on the geo information. So geo information started becoming free. And then by 2014, 2015, 2013, 14 perhaps, we had even very high resolution digital terrain models in the public domain, for example. Without that, you couldn't do any big research. So the nation opened up in the next 10 years. Of course, I was not in the country to witness all those in that period, but the nation opened up basically because of one disaster which taught us that your education is not enough, your education is not applied, it has not been very helpful. I don't want to undermine anyone. I know I'm talking to the stalwarts and I'm talking to very learned people, but I'm just sharing my concerns or the learnings that I had or the